The water came without warning. Sarah watched from her makeshift shelter as the flood turned city streets into raging rivers, sweeping away cars like toys. That's when she heard it, a child's scream cutting through the roar of the water. Without hesitation, she plunged into the current, fighting against the surge to reach a small hand grasping desperately at a broken fence. In that moment, Sarah forgot she was homeless, forgot she had nothing. She only knew she had to save this girl. But as they huddled together in her hidden sanctuary, military drones appeared in the darkening sky, their cameras fixed on her location. Sarah realized then, this flood wasn't just a natural disaster. Why were government forces so interested in a homeless woman and the child she'd rescued? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah's hands trembled as she helped the girl out of her soaked clothes. The child couldn't have been more than 8, her dark hair plastered to her face, eyes wide with a mix of fear and exhaustion. They were safe for now in Sarah's underground sanctuary, a forgotten maintenance room in the city's abandoned subway tunnels, transformed over months into something resembling a home. "I'm Sarah," she said softly, wrapping her only spare blanket around the girl's shoulders. "What's your name?" The child clutched a torn backpack to her chest, water still dripping from its frayed edges. Something about the way she held it, like it contained secrets rather than just soggy schoolbooks, made Sarah's engineer's mind tick with questions. "Maya," the girl whispered finally. "My name is Maya." Her fingers traced a series of strange markings on the backpack's strap, symbols that looked more like circuit diagrams than children's doodles. Sarah busied herself with their immediate needs, trying to ignore the persistent hum of drones overhead. Her shelter wasn't just any homeless hideout. She'd chosen it carefully, mapping ventilation shafts, electricity access points, and emergency exits. 6 months of living on the streets had taught her that survival required more than just finding food and staying warm. "You're an engineer," Maya said suddenly, eyes fixed on Sarah's wall of carefully drawn diagrams, weather patterns, flood projections, and city infrastructure maps that she'd been obsessively tracking. Sarah froze. "How did you—" "The way you look at things, like you're always calculating." Maya's voice carried a weight beyond her years. "My parents were scientists too, before—" A loud crash from above cut through the silence, followed by the sound of heavy boots on pavement. Military boots. Sarah's heart raced as she quickly dimmed their solar-powered LED lamp. "Maya," she whispered, "why were you really by that fence?" The girl's hands tightened on her backpack. "They said the flood was coming. They said it would hide what they did." A single tear rolled down her cheek. "My parents. They tried to—" "Stop it." Sarah's gaze drifted to her weather journal, pages filled with anomalies she'd noticed over the past months. Storms that didn't follow natural patterns, military presence increasing before each natural disaster. She'd thought she was paranoid, seeing connections where there were none. Now, looking at Maya's haunted eyes and the mysterious markings on her backpack, Sarah realized she might have stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple rescue. The drones hummed closer, their shadows visible through the grating above. Sarah pulled Maya deeper into the shadows of their haven, mind racing. She wasn't just a homeless woman anymore. She was an engineer with evidence, a witness to something unprecedented, and now protector of what might be the key to understanding it all. The sound of radio static crackled through the small space. Maya's backpack was glowing, emitting a faint blue light from between its torn seams. "They're looking for this," Maya whispered, finally unzipping the bag. "They're looking for me." Inside, nestled among soggy notebooks and a worn teddy bear, was a device Sarah had only seen in theoretical engineering journals, a quantum weather calculator, its display showing patterns that matched her own careful observations of the unnatural storms. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming A picture that chilled Sarah more than any flood. She looked at her wall of diagrams, then at Maya's frightened face, and made a decision. They couldn't hide forever. But before they moved, she needed to understand exactly what she'd gotten herself into, and why the military was so desperate to find them. Above, the drones continued their relentless search, their shadows drawing ever closer patterns across the floor of their hidden sanctuary. The military-grade radio crackled to life at exactly 3 a.m., jolting Sarah from her fitful sleep. Maya hadn't stirred. Exhaustion had finally claimed her hours ago, but Sarah's eyes snapped to the device protruding from the girl's partially unzipped backpack. Delta 7, grid coordinates confirmed. Package location narrowed to Sector 4. Subterranean infrastructure. Proceed with extraction protocol. Sarah's breath caught. Sector 4. They were in Sector 4. The voice continued, clinical and cold. Asset is considered critical to Project Deluge. Extreme caution advised. Civilian casualties acceptable if necessary to secure the package. The package. Sarah looked at Maya's sleeping form, pieces clicking into place. They weren't searching for a device. They were searching for a child. A gentle knock at their hidden entrance made Sarah freeze. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, old Joe's signal. She carefully made her way to the concealed door. "They're sweeping the tunnels," Joe whispered as she cracked the door open. The elderly man's face was drawn with worry, his usually bright eyes dark. But that's not the worst of it. The others, they're seeing things. The flood. It wasn't right. Sarah pulled him inside, mind racing. "What do you mean, wasn't right?" "Maria from the West Tunnel, she used to work maintenance for the city's water system, says the flood barriers were working fine. Then just failed. All at once, like they were turned off." Joe's eyes drifted to Maya. And now, military types. Crawling everywhere, asking about a girl. Sarah's engineering instincts flared. Flood barriers didn't just fail simultaneously, not unless... "Joe, I need you to get a message to someone, an old colleague at the university's environmental engineering department." Sarah quickly scribbled on a scrap of paper. "Dr. Helen Martinez. Tell her Sarah Chen needs her to check the data from Thursday's storm. Look for pattern anomalies in the pressure systems." "You think this goes deeper?" Joe asked, tucking the paper into his coat. Before Sarah could answer, Maya sat up suddenly, eyes wide. "They're coming. 3 teams. Northwest Tunnel, maintenance. Shaft and..." She closed her eyes as if listening to something they couldn't hear. "And the old service elevator." Joe looked at Sarah, questions in his eyes, but she was already moving. "How long?" 20 minutes. Maybe less." Maya was shoving things into her backpack, movements precise despite her fear. Sarah grabbed her journal and essential supplies. Mind, working through their options. The tunnels had seemed safe, but now they felt like a trap. Above them, the drone presence had intensified, their humming a constant reminder of the net slowly closing around them. "The homeless network," Joe said. "Suddenly, we can help. Most folks down here, they've got reasons to avoid authority, stories they don't tell. But they know every crack and corner of this city's underground." The radio crackled again. "All units converge on Sector 4. Heat signatures detected in abandoned maintenance sections. Prepare for breach." Sarah made her decision. "Joe, spread the word. Anyone who's noticed strange weather patterns, unusual military presence, anything out of the ordinary. There's something bigger happening here, and I think Maya's parents knew what it was." Maya looked up sharply. "They tried to warn everyone about Project Deluge, about what they're really doing with the weather, but nobody would listen." "They'll listen now," Sarah said, checking their escape route, "because this time we'll have proof." As they prepared to move, Sarah noticed Maya pulling something else from her backpack. A small notebook, its pages filled with complex equations and diagrams. "Mom's research," Maya said quietly, "about how they're controlling the storms. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture more terrifying than Sarah had imagined. This wasn't just about one flood or one child. This was about power. The power to control nature itself. The radio hissed with increasing activity. Time was running out. Sarah took one last look at their temporary sanctuary, at the wall of weather patterns she'd documented. She'd been right all along, but understanding the truth was only the beginning. Now they had to survive long enough to expose it. "Ready?" she asked Maya, shouldering her pack. The girl nodded, clutching her backpack with its precious cargo of secrets. Above them, the drones continued their ominous patrol, but now their presence held new meaning. They weren't just searching. They were part of something bigger, a conspiracy that went all the way up to the clouds themselves. Together, they slipped into the darkness of the tunnel, guided by Joe's knowledge and protected by an invisible network of society's forgotten people. The truth about Project Deluge was out there, hidden in the rain and storm and flood. And Sarah was going to find it. Old tunnels branched like veins through the city's underbelly, and Sarah led Maya through them with purposeful steps. The girl hadn't spoken since they left their shelter, but her eyes constantly moved, tracking invisible signals only she could sense. They emerged into a larger chamber, once a storage area for maintenance equipment, now transformed into a makeshift command center by the underground community. Dozens of homeless individuals had gathered, their faces illuminated by strings of salvaged LED lights. "Sarah!" Dr. Helen Martinez stepped forward from the crowd, her academic polish somewhat dimmed by weeks of helping the underground network. "I got your message. The data, it's unlike anything I've seen." Sarah pulled out her weather journal, spreading it across a makeshift table. "Show me." Helen produced a waterproof USB drive, its military-grade casing scratched but intact. "Someone dropped this during the evacuation. The files are partially corrupted, but what I could recover..." She plugged it into a battered laptop. "Look at these pressure systems." The screen displayed weather patterns that defied natural law. Storms forming in impossible configurations, pressure systems moving against prevailing winds, rainfall concentrated, with surgical precision over specific areas. "It's not just happening here," Helen continued, pulling up more data. "I've found similar anomalies in 5 other cities, always followed by military training exercises or emergency response drills." Maya approached the laptop, her small hand reaching toward the screen. "The quantum signatures, they're just like the ones my parents were tracking." Sarah's engineering mind raced, connecting dots. "They're using quantum weather calculation to create targeted weather events. But why? The resources needed for something like this?" "Because they're not just controlling weather," Maya said quietly. "They're testing something bigger. Mom called it Civilian Displacement Protocol." The room fell silent. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened another file on the USB drive. Project Deluge documentation flickered across the screen, fragmented but clear enough to send chills down her spine. "They're practicing," Sarah whispered, "learning how to use weather as a weapon to move populations, to control them." A sudden commotion at the chamber's entrance interrupted them. Joe burst in, breathing hard. "Military's changed their search pattern. They're not just looking anymore. They're sealing off sections of the tunnel system." Sarah quickly copied the USB's contents to her journal's hidden compartment. "They're not trying to find us. They're trying to trap us." The laptop screen flickered with new weather data. Maya's eyes widened. "Another storm is coming, bigger than before. They're going to use it to flush us out." Helen studied the pressure readings. "These patterns, they're creating a meteorological funnel, driving everything toward the river district." Sarah finished, seeing the design in the data. "Perfect for a controlled flood with limited evacuation routes." "How long?" "Hours, maybe less." Helen's voice was grim. Sarah looked at the gathered faces around her, people society had forgotten, but who had built their own community in the shadows. They had survived down here by being invisible. Now they might be the only ones who could expose the truth. We need to split up, Sarah decided. Helen, get this data to your contacts in the media. Joe, your network needs to warn people in the River District. They won't believe official evacuation orders, but they'll listen to you. What about us? Maya asked, clutching her backpack. Sarah studied the USB's final files, technical specifications for the weather control system. With her engineering background, she could understand enough to be dangerous. We're going to find out exactly how they're doing this, and we're going to stop it. The group dispersed with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role. As Sarah led Maya toward a maintenance shaft that would take them closer to their target, she felt the air pressure changing. The storm was already building. They had hours to prevent a disaster and expose a conspiracy. But first, they had to survive what was coming. Sarah squeezed Maya's hand as they climbed, the USB drive secure in her pocket. Sometimes the smallest things, a corrupted file, a child's knowledge, a homeless woman's observations, could change everything. Above them, the sky began to darken with unnatural speed. The archives room of the abandoned newspaper office smelled of mold and forgotten stories. Sarah ran her flashlight over stacks of yellowing papers, while Maya kept watch at the door. They'd sought shelter here after spotting increased military. Patrols near their planned route. Here, Sarah muttered, pulling out a thick folder. Weather anomalies, going back 3 years. The clippings told a disturbing story. Unexpected flash floods in Arizona, freak storms in Michigan, localized tornadoes in areas that had never seen them before. Each disaster followed by mysterious military presence, displaced communities, and scientific installations appearing shortly after. My parents started noticing the pattern last year, Maya said, approaching with an old tablet she'd found. Look at this. The tablet's screen showed a social media post, quickly deleted but saved by Maya's mother, of strange equipment being installed on mountain peaks before a devastating series of storms hit a small town in Colorado. A sudden noise from outside made them both freeze. Footsteps, military boots, but these were different. A single set, deliberate but not searching. "Don't move," a male voice said from the doorway. Sarah pushed Maya behind her, facing the beam of a tactical flashlight. But the officer's next word surprised them. "Dr. Chen, I worked with your colleague, Dr. Martinez. My name is Captain David Torres." Sarah's mind raced. Helen had mentioned a military contact, but prove it. "Project Deluge isn't about weather control," he said quietly. "It's about population engineering and what they did to Maya's parents." He stopped as Maya stepped forward. "You were there," she said, her voice trembling. "The night they took them." Torres lowered his light. "I was, and I've been trying to make it right ever since." He pulled out a worn envelope. "These are from other facilities, other experiments. Your parents weren't the first scientists to discover the truth." The envelope contained more newspaper clippings, but these never made it to print. Testimonies from displaced communities, weather station data showing impossible patterns, and photographs, research facilities hidden in plain sight, disguised as emergency response centers. "They're calling it climate security research," Torres explained, keeping his voice low. "But it's really about control. Create a disaster, move people where you want them, build your facilities in the vacuum left behind. Perfect testing grounds for more advanced weather manipulation." Sarah spread the articles across a dusty desk, her engineer's mind connecting patterns. "The quantum weather calculator in Maya's backpack, it's not just for predictions, is it?" "It's a control module," Torres confirmed. "One piece of a larger system. Your parents," he looked at Maya, "they found a way to disrupt it. That's why. They had to disappear them." Maya's hands trembled as she touched one of the photographs. "Mom said they were close to something, a way to prove it wasn't just random storms." A crash from several floors below interrupted them. Radio chatter echoed up the stairwell. "They're sweeping the building," Torres whispered. "Listen, there's a facility north of the city. That's where they're controlling this storm from. And that's where they're holding your parents." Sarah quickly gathered the articles, adding them to her journal. "Why help us?" "Because this was supposed to be about protecting people," Torres said bitterly. "Not controlling them, and because what they're planning next." He handed Sarah a final document. "This storm is just the beginning." The paper showed a map of the entire eastern seaboard, marked with calculated weather pattern disruptions that would displace millions. Implementation date, 3 days. "You need to hurry," Torres said, checking his radio. "They're getting closer to finding her frequency." He looked at Maya. "The quantum signature you're carrying, it's like a beacon to their systems." Sarah made a quick decision. "The River District evacuation. That's not their real target, is it?" Torres shook his head. "It's a cover. Their real target is more footsteps below, closer now." "Multiple teams, go," Torres urged, drawing his weapon. "I'll buy you time. Next time we meet, I'll have to try to arrest you." "Why try?" Sarah asked, already leading Maya toward their exit route. "Because some of us need to stay inside the system," he answered grimly. "To leave doors unlocked, to lose important files, to make mistakes at just the right moment." As they slipped away into the darkness, Sarah heard Torres begin his report over the radio. "Sector clear. No sign of the targets. Moving to next grid." Maya squeezed her hand as they ran. "He was telling the truth about everything, about my parents." Sarah clutched their newly gathered evidence close. The pieces were falling into place, but time was running out. Somewhere in the city, a quantum weather system was spinning up for its biggest test yet. And somewhere north, in a hidden facility, answers were waiting, along with just maybe 2 imprisoned scientists who had tried to stop it all. The rain had started, too precise, too concentrated to be natural. Sarah and Maya pressed themselves against the wall of the service tunnel as another military patrol passed overhead. They'd been moving for hours, forced to change routes repeatedly as their pursuers seemed to anticipate their movements. "They're using the weather itself to track us," Maya whispered, watching water patterns that moved against gravity. "The quantum signature, it's affecting the rain." A metallic glint caught Sarah's eye. Half buried in a drainage canal was something that didn't belong. Twisted remains of advanced technology, its housing marked with military serial numbers. "Don't," Maya warned as Sarah reached for it. "It's still active." Sarah pulled back just as a spark of electricity crackled across the debris. "Weather balloon components," she confirmed, examining it from a safe distance. "But look at these modifications." The remnants showed signs of quantum field generators, atmospheric pressure modulators, technology that shouldn't exist outside of theoretical papers. Mum called them seeders, Maya said, recognition flickering in her eyes. "They inject quantum-charged particles into storm systems. That's how they control the rain patterns." A rumble of thunder, too close, too directed, made them both jump. Sarah quickly photographed the debris with her battered phone, adding the evidence to their growing collection. "We need to move," she said, noting how the water patterns around them were shifting, condensing, as if the rain itself was trying to reveal their location. "The underground network can't hide us much longer." They pressed on through maintenance tunnels that grew increasingly treacherous with rising water levels. Sarah's engineering knowledge guided them through the maze, but each turn brought new challenges. The storm above was being weaponized against them, herding them like cattle. A crackling burst from Maya's backpack made them freeze. Through static, fragments of military communications filtered through. "Convergence at Sector 7. Quantum signature strengthening. Prepare for final phase." "Sarah," Maya's voice shook slightly. "They're not just tracking us anymore. They're using us." The realization hit Sarah like ice water. Every move they made, every tunnel they chose, They were being shepherded towards something. The military wasn't trying to catch them. They were driving them somewhere specific. A massive surge of water burst through a side tunnel, forcing them to scramble higher. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. They found themselves in an old metro station, abandoned years ago when the new lines were built. "Look!" Maya pointed to fresh marks on the walls. The underground network's secret. Code, warnings, directions, safe routes marked in symbols only the Forgotten would recognize. But these were different. They're evacuation markers. The network is moving, all of them. Sarah studied the symbols, her mind racing. The underground community was scattered across the city, but these marks showed coordinated movement. They knew something was coming, something bigger than a normal storm. Another piece of modified weather balloon equipment had wedged itself in a defunct escalator. This one was mostly intact, its control panel still flickering with active power. "I can access it," Maya said, reaching for the device. "Mom taught me the backdoor sequences. She said I might need them someday." Sarah watched as Maya's fingers danced across the panel, entering commands with frightening familiarity. The screen flickered, showing a map of the city overlaid with atmospheric data. Red dots marked the locations of other active seeders. "There!" Sarah pointed to a cluster of signals north of the city. "That must be the facility Torres mentioned, the coordination center for all of this." A sudden shift in the air pressure made their ears pop. Above, the storm was intensifying, but not naturally. The rain patterns were forming concentric circles, creating a massive meteorological trap with them at the center. "We can't stay in the tunnels," Sarah realized. "They're going to flood the entire underground system, flush out everyone, the network, the evidence, all of it." Maya clutched her backpack tighter. "Then we do what they don't expect. We go up." Sarah looked at her sharply. "Into the storm. That's what they want." "No." Maya's eyes held a determined gleam. "They want us to run scared, to be predictable. But we have something they don't know about." She pulled out her mother's notebook. "We have the shutdown codes for the entire Cedar network." The storm raged above them, but now Sarah saw it differently. Not just as a weapon against them, but as their cover, their chance. "Up it is," she agreed, memorizing the Cedar locations from the display. "Time to stop running and start fighting back." As they prepared to surface, Sarah pocketed a crucial piece of the weather balloon debris. Physical proof of weather manipulation, evidence that couldn't be dismissed as glitches or anomalies. They would need it, along with everything else they'd gathered. The truth about Project Deluge was about to break surface, and no amount of manufactured rain could wash it away. The abandoned church's basement smelled of candle wax and damp stone. Maria, the former water system technician, unrolled a large hand-drawn map across a worn table. Dozens of routes crisscrossed the paper in different colors, each marking a different type of passage through the city's hidden spaces. "We've been adding to this for years," Maria explained, her weathered finger tracing a path. "Service tunnels, forgotten basements, maintenance shafts, places the city forgot but we remembered." Sarah studied the intricate network of lines. Unlike official city plans, this map showed the true anatomy of the streets, the spaces between, above and below, places where the Forgotten could move unseen. These markings, she pointed to clusters of symbols near water treatment facilities. "They're recent." Maria nodded grimly. "Started noting them when the water pressure changed, not natural changes, precise ones, like someone was testing the system's limits." A small group of network leaders had gathered around the table. Old Joe stood at Maria's right, while others, Sarah knew only by their street names, Clockmaker, River Rose, the Professor, completed the circle. Each represented different sections of the underground community. "They're pushing us out," Clockmaker said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "Not just with the floods. Strange power surges in the east tunnels, temperature changes in the west, even the air pressure. It's all wrong." Maya had been quiet. studying the map with intense focus. Now she spoke. These aren't random tests. They're mapping the city's pressure points, learning how to control its systems. The professor, a former atmospheric scientist who'd fallen from grace after asking too many questions, leaned forward. The girl's right. These patterns, they're creating a closed system. The city itself is becoming their laboratory. Sarah pulled out their evidence. The newspaper clippings, Torres's documents, photos of the weather balloon debris. It's happening in other cities too. Project Deluge isn't just about weather control. It's about urban manipulation, population engineering on a massive scale. River Rose, who'd spent decades exploring the city's waterways, pointed to new markings. On the map, militaries setting up checkpoints here, and here. But look at the pattern. They're not trying to lock the city down. They're creating channels, herding routes, Sarah realized, like they tried to do with us in the tunnels. They're going to use the next storm to force people to move exactly where they want them. Maya opened her backpack, pulling out her mother's notebook. That's why the quantum signature is so important. It's not just for tracking, it's a test. They're learning how to predict and control human movement patterns under crisis conditions. The implications hit the room like a physical weight. This wasn't just about their city, it was a prototype, a test run for something much bigger. We've got people in every sector, old Joe said, adding new marks to the map. Eyes and ears everywhere. Even got some sympathetic folks above ground. Shop owners, maintenance workers, people who remember what it's like to need help. We'll need them all, Sarah said, her engineer's mind already calculating possibilities. The facility controlling this is north of the city. We have the shutdown codes for their Cedar network, but we need to get close enough to use them. And we need to warn people, Maria added. Not just our people, everyone. When this storm hits, they won't believe us. Clockmaker interrupted. We're invisible, remember? That's how we survive. Maybe it's time to be seen, River Rose countered. On our terms. Sarah traced a new route on the map, one that would take them through the heart of the city's infrastructure. We don't need everyone to believe us. We just need to disrupt their plan enough to expose it. Maya pointed to a section of the map showing maintenance tunnels near the water treatment plant. Mum's notes mention a backup system. If we can access it during the storm, we can prove the flooding isn't natural, the professor finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. The group huddled closer, adding new details to the map: escape routes, rally points, emergency shelters. The invisible network was mobilizing, preparing to become very visible indeed. They think we're just scattered survivors, old Joe said, his voice carrying years of quiet strength. They forgot that surviving teaches you how to fight. Outside, the engineered storm continued to build. But inside this basement sanctuary, a different kind of storm was brewing, one made of hope, determination, and the power of the forgotten to change everything. The utility access room buzzed with ancient fluorescent lights as Sarah worked to decrypt the tablet they'd recovered from a military checkpoint. Her fingers flew across the cracked screen, applying every encryption-breaking technique she'd learned during her engineering days. They're getting closer, Maya warned, her eyes closed in concentration. The girl's sensitivity to the quantum frequencies had grown stronger. Or maybe she'd just learned to trust it more. The rain patterns are changing again. A series of code sequences filled the tablet screen. Sarah's breath caught as she recognized the formatting. These weren't just weather predictions. They were command protocols. Got it, she muttered, finally breaking through the last firewall. Maya, look at this. The screen displayed a detailed operational timeline. Phase markers, deployment schedules, atmospheric pressure targets. But it was the map that made their hearts stop, a visualization of the coming storm's true scale. They're not just targeting the city, Maya whispered. They're using it as a test run for something bigger. The map showed weather pattern modifications, stretching across the entire coastline. Sarah scrolled through the data, her engineer's mind translating the technical specifications into terrifying reality. These pressure differentials, they're learning how to create controlled evacuation zones, forcing people to move exactly where they want them. A distant rumble of thunder punctuated her words, but this wasn't nature's voice. It was too precise, too calculated. Sarah, Maya's voice shook slightly. There's something else. In Mom's notes, she pulled out the worn notebook, flipping to a page filled with quantum calculations. She wasn't just tracking their weather manipulation. She found a pattern in the quantum signatures themselves. The girl laid the notebook beside the tablet, aligning the sequences. See, they're not just controlling the weather, they're using it to test something. The quantum frequencies, the way they interact with human movement patterns. Sarah's eyes widened as she saw it. They're building a predictive model, using the storm to study how populations react under controlled pressure. She looked at Maya. Your parents, they weren't just weather scientists, were they? Maya shook her head. Mom was quantum mechanics. Dad specialized in crowd behavior analysis. They thought they were helping design emergency response systems. But when they realized what Project Deluge really was, a sudden crash from above made them both jump. Water began seeping through the ceiling, too directed to be natural leakage. They're flooding the lower levels, Sarah realized. Trying to flush us up. She quickly copied the tablet's crucial files to a secure drive. We need to move, but Maya was still studying the aligned patterns. Wait, look at this sequence. The quantum signature I'm carrying, it's not just letting them track us, it's part of their core programming. Sarah leaned in, seeing it now. The frequency Maya carried wasn't just a beacon. It was a key component of their control system. That's why they want you back so badly. Without this specific quantum signature, their whole network becomes unstable, Maya finished. Mom made sure I memorized these frequencies. She knew they'd need them to maintain control of the larger weather patterns. The seeping water increased, now forming distinct streams that defied gravity. The storm above intensified, its unnatural patterns more obvious than ever. Sarah packed the tablet and notebook securely. We need to get this information to Torres. If he can verify these plans from the inside, it's not enough, Maya said, firmly. Exposing their plans won't stop what's coming. We need to disrupt their whole system. She pulled out the quantum weather calculator from her backpack. And I think I know how. The calculator's screen flickered with familiar patterns. But now, seeing it alongside the tablet's data and her mother's notes, Maya's fingers moved with new purpose. Mom built in a back door, she explained, entering a complex sequence. A way to introduce quantum instability into their controlled storm patterns. But we'll need to be close to their main facility. Sarah checked their position against the network's hand-drawn map. The northern facility was heavily guarded, but the underground routes showed a possible approach through old storm drains. How close? She asked. Close enough to feel the rain, Maya answered, her young face set with determination. Water continued to rise around their feet, but its patterns were revealing. Each unnatural flow, each gravity-defying stream showed them exactly what they were. Fighting against, nature itself turned into a weapon. Sarah made her decision. Then we go north, but first, she pulled out her phone, documenting everything they'd found. The network would need this information, proof of what was really happening. As they prepared to move, Maya paused, looking at the tablet one last time. They thought controlling the weather meant controlling people, she said quietly. They forgot that sometimes the smallest raindrop can change everything. Outside, the engineered storm gathered strength. But now they understood its patterns, its purpose, and more importantly, they knew its weakness. The electronics repair shop was one of the few places still open despite the worsening storm. Its owner, Li Chen, no relation to Sarah, had been part of the underground network for years, using his technical skills to help society's forgotten stay connected. Found this in a military disposal bin, Lee said, sliding a modified smartphone across his workbench. The device looked ordinary, except for subtle modifications to its antenna array and a custom-built signal processor attached to its back. Been picking up some strange frequencies lately. Sarah examined the phone carefully. The modifications were elegant, clearly the work of someone with deep technical knowledge. You built this? Had help, Lee admitted, glancing at a photo on his wall, himself with Maya's parents at a technical conference years ago. They knew what to look for, taught me how to detect quantum weather signatures. Maya touched the phone, and its screen immediately lit up with cascading patterns of interference. It's tuned to the same frequencies as the Cedar network, she said, recognition in her eyes. Sarah watched the patterns flow across the screen. Unlike natural weather interference, these showed clear algorithmic structure. Can you record these signals? Lee nodded, pulling up a database of collected readings. Been tracking them for months. Look at this pattern. It repeats 12 hours before every natural disaster. The data confirmed what they'd suspected. Each manufactured storm followed. A precise electronic signature. But there was something else in the readings, something that made Maya lean forward with sudden intensity. Those background frequencies, she said, pointing to a subtle pattern beneath the main signals. They're using quantum entanglement to coordinate the Cedar network. That's why they need my signature. It's part of the original entanglement pattern. Sarah's engineering mind raced with possibilities. If we could broadcast a disrupting signal on these same frequencies, already working on it, Lee said, revealing another modified phone. But we need something stronger than these consumer devices to affect their network. A sudden spike in the signal patterns made them all look up. The storm was intensifying, but now they could see the artificial structure behind it. They're starting. The final phase, Maya warned, reading the patterns. The evacuation protocols. They're going to trigger them soon. Lee pulled out a set of schematics. There's a broadcast tower near the northern facility, military grade. If we could access it, we'd need to get past their security, Sarah started, but Maya interrupted. No, she said, studying the signal. Patterns intently. We don't need their tower. We need something they're not watching. She pointed to an old telecommunications hub on Lee's map. Something they think is obsolete. Sarah saw it too. The old hub might be deprecated for normal communications, but its location was perfect for intercepting the quantum network. The equipment there is ancient, Lee warned, but the infrastructure is still solid, Sarah countered, her engineer's insight kicking in. And more importantly, it's not on their radar. We could modify it to amplify these phone signals. Maya was already adapting her quantum weather calculator, linking it to Lee's modified phones. Mom's shutdown codes. They're not just for the Cedars, they're for the whole quantum network. If we can broadcast them through the old hub, we could disrupt their entire control system, Sarah finished. She looked at Lee. We'll need parts, specific ones. Lee was already moving to his stockroom. Make a list, and hurry. That storm pattern you're seeing, it's bigger than anything they've tried before. As they gathered supplies, Sarah studied the phone's readings more carefully. The artificial patterns were growing stronger, more complex. They weren't just controlling the weather anymore, they were pushing its limits, testing how far they could go. Maya worked quickly, her small hands sure as she helped modify the equipment. Dad used to say technology is neutral, she said quietly. It's how people use it that matters. Sarah thought of the quantum network, of weather turned into a weapon. Then let's use it to show the truth. Outside, the engineered storm built toward its crescendo. But now, thanks to Lee's modified phone, they could see through the chaos to the pattern beneath. More importantly, they could prove what they saw. The question was, could they broadcast the truth before Project Deluge unleashed its final storm? The old telecommunications hub loomed before them, its metal skeleton silhouetted against the artificially darkened sky. As Sarah and Maya approached through the rain, something metallic glinted in a puddle near the entrance. Sarah reached down, retrieving a waterlogged security badge. "Project Deluge," she read, wiping water from its surface. "Atmospheric Modification Division." The clearance levels listed made her breath catch. "This goes higher than we thought. Look at these authorization codes." Maya studied the badge, her fingers tracing its embedded security chip. "These aren't just military signatures. There's private sector involvement too. Corporate logos I recognize from Mum's research facility." The badge belonged to Dr. Elizabeth Chen, no relation to Sarah, but the coincidence made her uneasy. Director of Quantum Integration, Access Level, Omega. "She worked with my parents," Maya whispered, recognition dawning. "She was there the day they discovered the quantum signature problems. She said she'd help them report it, but instead, a crash of thunder, precisely timed, artificially generated, interrupted them. The storm was building faster now, its patterns more aggressive. "We need to get inside," Sarah urged, using the badge to access the hub's side entrance. Security. Protocols still functioned, despite the building's abandoned appearance. The interior was a maze of old servers and telecommunications equipment. But mixed among the obsolete technology were newer additions. Quantum relay nodes, carefully disguised to look like ordinary hardware. "They're using the old infrastructure," Sarah realized, her engineering background helping her piece it together. "Hiding their control systems in plain sight, piggybacking on abandoned networks." Maya moved through the space with growing certainty, following invisible quantum signatures only she could sense. The relay nodes, they're all connected to a central control point. The northern facility isn't just monitoring the weather. They're using these hubs to extend their range. Sarah examined the badge more closely, finding a hidden compartment containing a micro SD card. The files it contained made her blood run cold. "This isn't just about controlling weather," she said, scrolling through project documents. "They're creating a network of controlled evacuation zones across the entire country, using manufactured disasters to test population response patterns. Look at these deployment schedules." Maya pointed to a timeline. "They're accelerating their tests. The storm they're building now, it's not just another trial run. Sarah saw it too, the preparations, the scale of resources being deployed. It's a full implementation. They're going live with the entire system." A familiar voice crackled through. Their modified phone. "Sarah, Maya, it's Torres. Things are moving faster than we thought. They know about the quantum signature interference. They're changing protocols." Through the hub's grimy windows, they could see military vehicles converging on the city center. But the movement patterns were strange, too coordinated, too precise. "They're not just evacuating people," Maya said, watching the vehicles through the quantum calculator's interface. "They're herding them, creating controlled panic to test their models." Sarah spread the badge's documents across an old control panel. Project Deluge wasn't just a weather control program, it was a massive social engineering experiment, using manufactured disasters to study and manipulate human behavior on an unprecedented scale. "Your parents," Sarah turned to Maya, understanding dawning. "They didn't just find a flaw in the system, they discovered its true purpose." Maya nodded, tears mixing with rain on her face. "Mom said sometimes the biggest storms aren't in the sky, they're in what people do to each other." The hub's old equipment hummed to life around them, responding to the quantum signatures flowing through the building. Through their modified phone, they could see the artificial storm patterns expanding, covering the entire region. "We can't stop the storm directly," Sarah said, studying the relay nodes, "but we can use their own network against them, show everyone what they're really doing." Maya connected her quantum calculator to the hub systems. Mom's shutdown codes, they weren't just for the Cedars. They were for moments like this. Outside, the engineered storm reached new intensity, but inside the hub, surrounded by the ghosts of old technology and the hidden machinery of weather control, they had found something more powerful than any: manufactured disaster. The truth about Project Deluge, written in the circuits of a single security badge. The question was, could they expose it before the storm reached its peak? The first explosion rocked the telecommunications hub as Sarah pried open a hidden panel, revealing sleek technology that had no business being inside an abandoned building. A weather control device fragment still humming with quantum energy, its casing marked with both military and corporate insignias. "It's a node controller," Maya said, her voice tight with recognition. "Like the ones in Mom's lab. But this is an earlier version. They were testing the system right here, using the old telecom network as cover." Sarah carefully disconnected the device, her engineer's hands steady, despite the urgency. "The quantum signatures are the same as the Cedar network. They've been building this infrastructure for years, hiding it in plain sight." The device's display flickered with real-time data, atmospheric pressure modifications, wind pattern adjustments, precipitation control variables. But it was the mortality projections that made Sarah's blood run cold, calculated casualty rates for various evacuation scenarios. "They're not trying to prevent disasters," she whispered. "They're optimizing them." Another explosion, closer this time. Through the hub's windows, they could see military teams taking up positions. Their movements were different now, more aggressive, more coordinated. "They're changing formation," Maya observed, reading the patterns in both the soldiers' movements. "And the intensifying storm, the quantum signatures, they're using them to coordinate the ground teams too." Sarah's modified phone crackled with Torres's voice. "They're implementing Protocol Omega. Whatever you're going to do it fast. Once the full storm system activates." Static cut him off as another explosion hit even closer. The hub's old structure groaned under the assault of both military hardware and engineered weather. Maya connected her quantum calculator to the node controller, her fingers flying across both devices. Mom's shutdown codes, they were based on this earlier version. That's why they're not working on the newer systems. But if we can use this node to broadcast, we can disrupt their whole network. Sarah finished, understanding. She quickly linked their modified phone to the setup, creating a makeshift quantum transmission array. The storm outside reached new intensity. Rain fell in geometric patterns. Wind currents shifted with mathematical precision. Nature itself bent to Project Deluge's will. Through the hub systems, they could see the larger pattern now. Similar nodes across the country, all connecting to the northern facility. A web of control spreading across the entire continent, disguised as emergency response infrastructure. "Sarah," Maya's voice shook slightly, "look at these command protocols. The storm they're generating now. It's not just about our city. They're using it to trigger responses in other nodes, like a cascade effect." Sarah studied the data streams. The girl was right. Each manufactured disaster was designed to cause chain reactions, forcing population movements on a massive scale. "Your parents," Sarah said, understanding dawning. "They didn't just discover the weather manipulation. They found out it was all connected. Every test, every staged evacuation, every natural disaster. All building to this moment." The hub's equipment hummed with increasing power as Maya worked, her young face set in concentration. "Dad always said systems have memories," she murmured. "Even quantum ones. If we can access this node's original programming." A direct hit rocked the building. Through gaps in the walls, they could see soldiers in advanced weather gear moving closer, their tactics synchronized with the engineered storm patterns. "Maya," Sarah warned, checking their exits. "We're running out of time." "Almost there," Maya replied, her fingers never stopping. "The old node's quantum signature, it's like a key, opening doors in their network that they thought they'd closed." Sarah's phone lit up with incoming data. The node controller was giving them everything: project histories, personnel files, deployment schedules. The entire truth of Project Deluge, hidden in the circuits of a single fragment. But it was more than just evidence now. The node's older systems offered something even more valuable: a way into the current network. A chance to expose not just what they'd done, but what they were about to do. The soldiers were almost at the doors. The storm had reached impossible intensity, its patterns so artificial they seemed to tear at reality itself. And in the heart of the old telecommunications hub, surrounded by the ghosts of old technology and the cutting edge of quantum weather control, Sarah and Maya faced a choice. They could run, taking their evidence to safety, or they could stay, using this fragment of the past to break Project Deluge's hold on the future. Thunder cracked overhead, precise, controlled, engineered. But this time, they understood its language, and they were ready to answer back. The quantum weather calculator pulsed with ethereal light as Maya connected it to the hub's systems. Its holographic display filled the air with atmospheric data, showing them the true scope of Project Deluge's control. Sarah had never seen anything like it. Weather patterns transformed into pure mathematics, natural chaos reduced to controllable equations. "This is how they do it," Maya whispered, her fingers tracing patterns in the light. "The calculator doesn't just predict weather, it shapes it. Every raindrop, every wind current, all controlled through quantum manipulation." Sarah's engineering background helped her grasp the implications. They're not just controlling individual storms, they're rewriting the fundamental rules of atmospheric behavior. The calculator's display shifted, showing nested layers of control systems. Local nodes connected to regional hubs, feeding into the master facility up north. But there was something else. A pattern within the patterns. "Look at these base calculations." Sarah pointed to a recurring sequence. "They're using prime number encryption, just like your parents suspected. But these formulas, they're human behavior models," Maya finished, recognition flashing in her eyes. "Dad's work. They took his research on crowd dynamics and combined it with Mom's quantum calculations." The holographic display flickered as another explosion rocked the building. Through the quantum visualization, they could see military teams moving in precise formations, their tactics synchronized with the engineered weather patterns. "They're using the storm itself to herd them," Sarah realized, watching the soldiers' movements. The quantum signatures aren't just controlling the weather, they're creating predictable response patterns in everyone exposed to them. Maya's hands flew across the calculator's interface, digging deeper into its systems. "That's why they need my quantum signature. It's not just about tracking us, it's part of the original behavioral programming. Without it, their whole prediction model falls apart." Water began seeping through the hub's walls, not random leaks but precise streams moving against gravity. The building itself was being weaponized against them. Sarah's modified phone crackled, with Torres's voice breaking through the interference. "They're initiating final countdown. The northern facility, something bigger than can't stop." Static consumed his warning, but the calculator's display told them everything they needed to know. The storm patterns were shifting, combining, building towards something unprecedented. "Sarah," Maya's voice shook slightly, "these calculations, they're not just about our storm. Look at the atmospheric modeling." The holographic display expanded, showing weather systems across the entire continent, each one subtly manipulated, carefully engineered to create specific population responses. Project Deluge wasn't controlling individual storms, it was orchestrating a symphony of manufactured disasters. "Your parents," Sarah said, understanding dawning, "they didn't just discover weather control. They found out the whole thing was a test run. Every disaster, every evacuation, practice," Maya whispered. "They were practicing for something bigger. And now—" She pointed to a countdown sequence hidden in the calculator's data streams. Sarah felt her blood run cold. The numbers weren't just a timer. They were atmospheric pressure coordinates, quantum manipulation sequences, population response algorithms. Everything Project Deluge had learned, everything they'd tested, all building to this moment, the calculator's display pulsed with urgent warnings. The engineered storm above was reaching critical mass, its patterns so artificial they seemed to tear at the fabric of reality itself, but in those impossible mathematics, in the quantum calculations that sought to turn nature into a weapon, Sarah saw something else. A flaw. A vulnerability coded into the system's very foundation. Maya, she said urgently, your quantum signature, it's not just a key to their system. It's a blueprint of the original programming. Before they weaponized it, understanding lit the girl's face. Mom's notes, the shutdown codes aren't just commands. They're a reset, Sarah finished. A way to remind the quantum network of its original purpose. The building shuddered under another assault, water now flowing up walls and across ceilings in impossible patterns. They were out of time. Maya's hands moved with newfound purpose across the calculator's interface, her movements sure despite the chaos around them. Dad always said systems remember what they're meant to be, even quantum ones. Outside, the engineered storm reached new heights of impossible power. But inside the hub, surrounded by the ghosts of old technology and the pure mathematics of weather-turned-weapon, they had found something stronger than any manufactured disaster, the truth coded into the quantum weather calculator itself. Now, they just had to survive long enough to use it. The commander's orders crackled through their modified phone, intercepted from military channels. The voice was cold, precise. All units implement Protocol Omega, weather control systems at maximum capacity, civilian casualties now authorized in pursuit of primary objective. But another voice cut through. Torres, broadcasting on an encrypted frequency. Belay that order. This is Captain Torres, Security Override Charlie 7. Project Deluge has exceeded authorized parameters. All units switch to civilian protection protocols. Through the hub's windows, they could see the military forces hesitate, split between conflicting orders. The storm raged above, its patterns now visibly artificial. Look at these authorization codes, Sarah said, scanning the transmitted documents. The commander's using corporate override protocols. This isn't a military operation anymore. It's been privatized. Maya's quantum calculator pulsed with warning signals. The northern facility is spinning up their main systems. They're not just controlling the storm. They're about to trigger simultaneous events across multiple cities. The documents flowing through their intercept showed a web of private contractors, shell companies, and buried authorizations. Project Deluge had grown beyond its military origins, becoming something more insidious. Your parents saw this coming, Sarah realized, reading between the lines. The military developed the technology, but corporations took control. That's why the normal chain of command is breaking down. Outside, the split was becoming physical. Some units followed Torres's orders, moving to protect evacuation routes. Others pressed forward under corporate command, their movements synchronized with the engineered storm patterns. Maya worked rapidly at the quantum calculator's interface, correlating the commander's orders with the system's base code. Mom left. Markers in the programming, warnings about corporate override protocols. She knew they'd try to seize control. Sarah's phone lit up with incoming transmissions from the underground network. Similar patterns were emerging across the city. Military units facing off against private security forces, all while the manufactured storm grew stronger. They're not just testing weather control, Sarah said, the full picture finally clear. They're testing how to privatize disaster response, create the crisis, control the solution, and own the aftermath, Maya finished, her young face grim. That's what Mom and Dad discovered, why they had to disappear them. A massive surge of quantum energy from the northern facility made the hub's equipment spark. The commander's next orders were explicit. Initiate final phase. All units converge on the hub. The quantum signature must be secured, but Torres's resistance was spreading. More units switched to his command frequency, choosing to protect rather than pursue. The corporate control structure was fracturing. "Sarah," Maya called urgently, "look at these command sequences. They're trying to lock out military override codes, force all units to follow corporate protocols, but what? There's a backdoor. Mom built it into the original quantum programming. If we can broadcast the right sequence through the hub's systems," Sarah understood immediately, "we can restore military control, give Torres the authority to shut down the whole operation." The hub's old equipment groaned under the strain as they worked, combining Maya's quantum signature with the military override codes. Outside, the storm reached impossible intensity, its patterns so artificial they seemed to tear at reality itself. But, in the chaos of competing commands and fractured authority, they had found their moment. The corporations controlling Project Deluge had forgotten something crucial. The system's original purpose had been to protect, not control. "Torres," Sarah broadcast on the secure channel, "we're sending you command override sequences. When you receive them—" "Already in position," he replied. "Half the force is with me. We're ready to move on the northern facility. Just give us back control of the system." Maya's hands flew across the quantum calculator, merging military protocols with her mother's hidden programming. "It's not just about control," she said softly. "It's about remembering what these systems were meant to do." The commander's orders continued to flow, increasingly desperate as more units switched allegiance. But in the heart of the old telecommunications hub, surrounded by the proof of corporate corruption and military honor, the truth of Project Deluge was finally breaking free. Now, they just had to survive the storm long enough to share it. The emergency broadcast device had been hidden in plain sight, a seemingly obsolete piece of equipment that was actually a sophisticated quantum transmitter. Sarah's hands moved quickly across its controls, interfacing it with their modified phone and Maya's. "Calculator. The old emergency alert system," Sarah explained, recognizing the technology. "They built their control network on top of it, but the original infrastructure is still intact. Like they did with the weather stations," Maya added, helping to connect the systems. Using existing networks to hide their real purpose, the device hummed to life, its display showing coverage maps of the city's emergency broadcast system. But these weren't standard alert protocols. They were quantum-enhanced, capable of piercing through Project Deluge's manufactured interference. "Torres, are you receiving?" Sarah transmitted on their secure channel. "Affirmative," his voice crackled. "Back. We've secured the south side emergency stations, ready to amplify your signal when you broadcast." Through the hub's windows, they could see the city's transformation. The engineered storm had created distinct zones, some areas nearly dry, while others faced impossible flooding. Corporate security forces herded people along predetermined evacuation routes, their movements synchronized with the weather patterns. Maya's quantum calculator displayed the larger pattern. "They're using the emergency system to direct evacuations. But look," she pointed to subtle variations in the alert signals. "They're embedding behavior modification frequencies in the broadcasts." Sarah studied the patterns. The corporations hadn't just taken control of the weather. They'd turned the entire emergency response system into a mass manipulation tool. "We can't just warn people about the storm," Sarah realized. "We need to expose the whole system, show them how they're being controlled." The device's interface showed multiple broadcast channels, each carrying different elements of Project Deluge's control protocols. Sarah began isolating the frequencies, preparing to turn their weapon of control into a tool for truth. "The northern facility is responding," Maya warned, watching quantum energy patterns shift. "They're trying to lock down the emergency broadcast network. But they had something the facility didn't expect, Maya's quantum signature, combined with her mother's original programming. The very thing that had allowed them to track her could now be used to break their control. "Underground network, stand by," Sarah transmitted. "When we activate the emergency system, we'll need you to verify the broadcasts are reaching your sectors." Acknowledgements came back from across the city, the forgotten people of the underground, positioned to ensure the truth would reach everyone. Maya's fingers flew across the calculator's interface, merging her quantum signature with the emergency protocols. "Mom, built-in redundancies," she explained. "Ways to restore the system's original purpose. We just have to—" A massive surge of energy from the northern facility interrupted her. The corporate controllers had realized what they were attempting. The hub's equipment crackled with competing signals as they tried to maintain control. "Torres," Sarah called urgently, "we need those military channels clear. They're trying to override." "Working on it," he replied through static. "Half my forces are engaging their security teams. The other half, you're not going to believe this, but we're getting reinforcements. Other bases, other units, they're seeing the pattern. Choosing sides." The emergency broadcast device pulsed with building power as they completed the connections. Through its displays, they could see the city's emergency alert system coming alive, not with corporate control protocols, but with the truth. "Ready?" Sarah asked Maya, hands poised over the final controls. The girl nodded, her young face set with determination. "Mom and Dad tried to warn everyone from the inside. Now we'll do it from the outside." Sarah activated the broadcast sequence. The device hummed with quantum-enhanced power, sending their message through every emergency channel in the city. "This is not a natural disaster. The storms, the floods, they're all manufactured. Project Deluge is a corporate military program designed to control population movement through engineered weather. But we have proof, and we have the power to stop it." Through the hub's windows, they could see their broadcast taking effect. Digital billboards flickered with their message. Phone screens lit up with their warning. Car radios crackled with the truth. The storm raged overhead, but now everyone could see it for what it was. Not nature's fury, but a weapon of control. And in the heart of the old telecommunications hub, surrounded by the technology of truth and deception, Sarah and Maya watched their message spread like lightning through the manufactured rain. The corporations had turned the emergency broadcast system into a tool of control. But now, that same system was about to become their undoing. The weather control override key materialized in Maya's quantum calculator display, a complex sequence of code that pulsed with possibilities. It wasn't a physical key, but a digital skeleton key, hidden in the deep architecture of Project Deluge's systems by her mother. "Look at the base encryption," Sarah said, studying the intricate patterns. "It's not just an override. It's a complete system reset, a way to restore the original weather control protocols." Maya's fingers traced the quantum signatures. "Mom built it into the foundation of the whole network. She knew someday someone would need to undo what they'd done." The northern facility's response was immediate and devastating. The engineered storm intensified to impossible levels, rain falling in geometric patterns that defied physics. Corporate security forces converged on the hub, their movements synchronized with the artificial weather patterns. "Torres, status?" Sarah transmitted urgently. "Military forces engaged with corporate security at all major points," he reported through static. "But something's happening at the facility. Energy readings off the charts. His transmission cut off as a massive quantum surge hit the hub. Emergency lights flickered as systems overloaded. "They're trying to burn out the old infrastructure," Sarah realized, watching equipment spark and fail, "cut us off from the broadcast network." But Maya was already adapting, her quantum calculator interfacing with the override key's protocols. "They forgot something," she said, eyes fixed on the streaming data. "All their new systems are built on top of the old ones. If we can use the key to reach the base programming—" Sarah understood immediately. We can bypass their corporate controls entirely, go straight to the source code. The hub's remaining displays showed the battle raging across the city. Military units under Torres's command fought to protect civilian evacuation routes, while corporate forces tried to maintain their engineered panic. Above it all, the manufactured storm reached new heights of impossible power. "Sarah," Maya called urgently. "The override key, it's showing something else. Look at these energy patterns." The quantum signatures were shifting, revealing a hidden layer of programming. The corporations hadn't just taken control of the weather manipulation system, they'd modified it to feed off its own effects, creating a self-sustaining cycle of manufactured disasters. "That's why they need your quantum signature," Sarah said, the final piece clicking into place. "It's not just about tracking you, it's the only thing that can break the cycle." Maya nodded grimly. "Mom made sure of that. She encoded my signature with a quantum variant that can disrupt their entire feedback loop." Another surge rocked the building as corporate forces breached the lower levels. They could hear boots on the stairs, weapons being primed. "Torres," Sarah broadcast on their secure channel. "We've found a way to shut down their whole system, but we'll need everything we've got," he finished. "Already on it. All loyal units converging on your position. Just tell us what you need." Sarah looked at Maya, saw the same determination she felt reflected in the girl's eyes. "We need time, and we need to get a signal directly into the Northern Facilities quantum network." "Leave that to us," Torres replied. Through the hub's windows, they could see military units taking up defensive positions, creating a perimeter around the building. Maya connected her quantum calculator to their remaining broadcast equipment. The override keys protocols, merging with her unique signature. "Mom always said systems remember their original purpose," she said softly, "even quantum ones." The storm raged outside. Corporate forces pressed their attack, and the Northern Facility poured more power into their weather control network. But in the heart of the old telecommunications hub, surrounded by the ghosts of honest intentions and the proof of corporate corruption, Sarah and Maya prepared to remind Project Deluge of what it was meant to be. "Ready?" Sarah asked, hands hovering over the final controls. Maya nodded, the override keys, quantum signatures, pulsing in sync with her own. "Ready to show them what happens when you try to control the rain." Above them, the engineered storm reached its peak of impossible power. But this time, they weren't running from it. They were about to become the storm. The Project Deluge final report flashed across their screens as Maya's quantum signature interfaced with the facility's network. Not just data, but a complete confession of corporate corruption and weaponized weather control. Dr. Elizabeth Chen's personal logs, automatically uploaded as their override key, breached the system's defenses. "To whoever finds this," the report began, "I helped create a monster. We started with good intentions, predicting disasters, protecting people. But then the corporation saw the potential, not just to control weather, but to control people through weather. This is my attempt to make it right." Sarah and Maya read. Rapidly, as corporate forces fought their way up through the hub's levels, each floor defended by Torres's loyal soldiers. "The quantum weather manipulation wasn't the end goal," the report continued. "It was a test run for something larger. Project Deluge is phase 1 of atmospheric sovereignty, private control of weather itself, turning natural disasters into corporate assets." Maya's hands flew across her quantum calculator, integrating the report's revelations with their override protocols. "Look at these mortality projections," she said, voice tight. "They weren't accidents. They were calculating acceptable losses for maximum profit." The Northern Facilities systems fought back against their intrusion, sending surges of quantum energy through the old network. Equipment sparked and failed around them, but they'd anticipated this. The underground network had helped them set up redundant connections throughout the city. "Torres," Sarah transmitted, "the report confirms everything. Project Deluge was never about emergency response. It was about proving they could monetize disasters. Copy that, he replied through static. We're uploading to multiple secure servers now. No way they can bury this. The report's final sections detailed the full scope of corporate plans. Weather, futures markets, privatized disaster response, controlled evacuation zones that would force populations into corporate-owned safe havens. Dr. Chen had documented everything, hiding it in encrypted files that only Maya's quantum signature could unlock. Your parents, Sarah realized, reading the logs. They weren't just scientists working on the project. They were Dr. Chen's fail-safe team, building in vulnerabilities, preparing for this moment. Maya nodded, tears mixing with determination. Mom always said sometimes you have to work from the inside to fix what's broken. That's why... She stopped as another surge hit the hub, this, one stronger than before. Through their monitors, they could see the northern facility spinning up their weather control systems to maximum power. The engineered storm above reached impossible intensity, its patterns so artificial they seemed to tear at reality itself. They're trying to overload the entire network, Sarah warned, burn out everything to cover their tracks. But Maya was already moving, her quantum calculator interfacing with both the override key and Dr. Chen's hidden protocols. They forgot something important, she said, fingers flying across controls. You can't erase quantum memories. The system remembers what it was meant to be. The report's final entry flashed across their screens. The quantum signature I encoded in Maya isn't just a key, it's a reminder. These systems were built to protect, not control, and in the right hands, they can be restored to their original purpose. Corporate forces breached the floor below as Maya activated the final sequence. Her quantum signature pulsed through the network, carrying Dr. Chen's hidden protocols to every node in the Project Deluge system. Sarah, Torres called urgently, whatever you're going to do, do it now. We can't hold them much longer. Sarah looked at Maya, saw the same certainty she felt reflected in the girl's eyes. With the truth of Project Deluge exposed in Dr. Chen's report, they had one last task, not just stopping the storm, but transforming it. Ready? Sarah asked, hands on the final controls. Maya nodded, her quantum signature already beginning to resonate with the network's base programming. Ready to remind them what RAIN is supposed to be. The corporate forces reached their floor as they activated the override sequence, but they were too late. Through the hub's windows, they could see the engineered storm patterns beginning to shift, corporate control giving way to natural chaos, as Maya's quantum signature restored the weather to its true nature. The Project Deluge final report had exposed the truth. Now it was time to let it rain. The new identity papers lay on Torres's desk, still warm from the printer. Sarah Chen was becoming Sarah Martinez, and Maya's documents showed her reunited with her parents under a new family name. The papers weren't just protection. They were a fresh start. Witness protection insisted, Torres explained, watching them examine their new identities. After what you exposed, the corporations won't just give up. You'll need to disappear for a while. Through his office window, they could see natural rain falling, genuine storms following real patterns. 3 days had passed since Maya's quantum signature had reset the weather control systems, and nature was finally reasserting itself. The underground network? Sarah asked, thinking of those who'd helped them. Being taken care of, Torres assured her. Maria's been appointed to a new oversight committee for weather monitoring. Old Joe's running a civilian outreach program. The forgotten aren't forgotten anymore. Maya traced her new name on the documents, her other hand still holding her quantum calculator. The device was officially decommissioned now, but they'd let her keep it as a reminder. What about Mom and Dad? Already at the safe house, Torres smiled. They're waiting for you. Dr. Chen's final report gave us everything we needed to clear their names and expose the corporate conspiracy. The aftermath of Project Deluge's exposure had shaken the world. Corporate executives arrested, military leaders court-martialed, emergency response systems returned to public control. But the biggest changes were harder to see. Trust rebuilding, systems healing, weather returning to its natural rhythms. The quantum network, Sarah asked, her engineer's mind still tracking details. Completely reimagined, Torres replied. Your reset didn't just stop their control. It showed us how to use the technology properly. Early warning systems, genuine disaster response, everything it was supposed to be in the first place. Maya's calculator pulsed softly, picking up traces of the restored quantum frequencies. Natural patterns now, protecting rather than controlling. Mum said systems remember their true purpose, she said quietly. She was right. Sarah gathered their new documents, each page representing a different piece of their future. Witness protection had been thorough, new backgrounds, new histories, new chances. The underground bunkers are being converted, Torres continued. Safe houses for real emergencies, monitored by the community itself. Your network showed us how to do it right. Through the window, they could see military teams dismantling the last of the corporate weather control equipment. The northern facility was being repurposed, genuine research now, transparent and publicly monitored. What about the other cities? Sarah asked. The broader network they were building? Being found and fixed, Torres assured her. Dr. Chen's report gave us everything, every location, every corporate connection. It's slow work, but we're restoring things to their natural state. Maya stood by the window, watching real clouds move in natural patterns. Her quantum signature was still unique, but now it served as a verification key for legitimate weather monitoring systems. A safeguard against future manipulation. Ready? Sarah asked her, gathering their belongings. The girl nodded, taking one last look at the city she'd helped save. The streets below were clearing of floodwater, communities rebuilding together. The forgotten people of the underground were emerging into the light, their knowledge and resilience finally recognized. Their new identities would take them far from here, to a place where they could heal and build something new. But they'd leave knowing they'd done more than stop a conspiracy. They'd restored something fundamental, the right of rain to fall where it would, of communities to protect their own, of nature to follow its true patterns. Torres walked them to his door, his posture straight with military pride, but his eyes warm with friendship. Remember, he said, if you ever need us, we know. Sarah smiled, taking Maya's hand. Some networks never really disappear. Together, they stepped out into natural sunlight, their new papers securing their future, their old memories strengthening their resolve. Above them, real clouds gathered, bringing real rain to a city that had finally remembered how to be free. 1 year later, Sarah stood before the memorial plaque in the renovated telecommunications hub, now a public museum and education center. The bronze surface caught the natural sunlight streaming through windows that once witnessed their desperate stand against Project Deluge. In memory of those who fought to keep our skies free, the plaque read. When corporations sought to control the weather itself, a homeless engineer, a brave child, and a network of forgotten heroes reminded us that nature belongs to everyone. Their courage exposed Project Deluge and returned the rain to its rightful purpose. Maya, now Maria, in their new life, stood beside her, both officially there as visiting researchers, studying weather monitoring systems. The girl's quantum calculator, preserved but depowered, held a place of honor in the museum's central display. Look, Maya whispered, pointing to a group touring the facility. Underground network badges. Sarah smiled, recognizing Maria's distinctive design on the tour guide's credentials. The forgotten people had become the guardians of truth, leading public education programs about weather manipulation and community resilience. The old hub hummed with new purpose. Genuine weather monitoring equipment shared space with preserved pieces of Project Deluge technology, each display telling part of the story. Students learned about quantum weather signatures, while community organizers planned natural disaster responses. Dr. Chen's final report played on loop in a dedicated theater, its revelations now part of the public record. Corporate weather control was officially banned, with international treaties enforcing transparent meteorological monitoring. "They're really doing it," Maya said softly, watching real-time weather data flow across modern screens. Using the technology the way Mom and Dad intended, the quantum network had been rebuilt from the ground up, its original protective purposes restored and enhanced. Early warning systems, disaster response coordination, legitimate research, all under constant public oversight. Sarah touched the plaque gently, feeling the raised letters that commemorated their stand. They didn't use their real names anymore, but their story lived on, inspiring others to question, to protect, to remember. Above them, natural clouds brought natural rain to a city that had learned to trust its skies again. And somewhere in those clouds, quantum sensors monitored genuine weather patterns, ensuring that nature would remain forever free. "Ready?" Sarah asked, knowing their visit was nearly over. Maya nodded, taking one last look at the place where everything changed. "Some storms," she said wisely. "You never really leave behind." Together they walked out into the honest rain, leaving their story to inspire others while they lived their new truth, under new names, beneath newly liberated skies.